If I showed you these two insects right now, could you tell which one's the bee and which one's the wasp? Most people think they could. But when they're flying past you in a single second, almost nobody looks at the animal. We just react. This is a bee, and this, a wasp. They look almost identical, but we don't treat them the same. One, we protect. The other, we swat away or try to kill. Here's the strange part. That split-second decision might rest on one of the biggest misunderstandings in nature. Because while a handful of wasp species earned a brutal reputation, thousands of others have spent millions of years doing work your life quietly depends on. They protect part of the food you eat. They keep entire forests alive. And one of them hides, in its venom, a molecule that could change how we treat certain cancers. The question isn't why we fear wasps anymore. The question is, how did we end up hating one of the most useful insects on the planet? Under a microscope, the head of a wasp reveals two compound eyes built from thousands of individual lenses, a pair of mandibles curved like precision forceps, and a waist so narrow it separates the thorax from the abdomen by a fraction of a millimeter. That waist is what lets her bend her body into impossible angles, to drive a stinger exactly where it needs to go, or to slip an egg into a space the size of a pinhead. But here's the fact that changes everything. The bee is not a cousin of the wasp. The bee is a wasp. One branch of the wasp lineage that, at some point in evolutionary history, stopped hunting other insects and started feeding on pollen and nectar instead. The bee nobody kills on a patio is, biologically, a modified branch of the very insect people crush without a second thought. And here's the first real answer to the question we opened with. The fear we feel toward the entire family comes from less than 1% of its species. That small group, the social wasp that builds colonies and defends paper nests, accounts for nearly every conflict humans have with the wasp. The rest, the overwhelming majority, live alone. Each female hunts, builds, and raises her young by herself, with no queen and no worker to protect, and no interest whatsoever in coming near a person. The scale of the group is hard to hold in your head. This group ranges from a wasp over 2 inches long to a wasp smaller than a millimeter. Among them, the species that holds the record for the smallest insect ever measured on the planet. Here's the number that puts the wasp on an entirely different scale than we imagine. Somewhere between 10 and 20% of all insects on Earth belong to the parasitoid wasp group. That's not a niche curiosity. It's one of the most numerous life forms on the planet, living almost entirely out of human sight. How can a group this vast go unnoticed for so long? Because most of its species measure less than 5 millimeters, never sting a human being, and spend their entire lives inside another insect, never once visiting a garden, never once landing on a table. Every one of those solitary species also carries a stinger, an inheritance shared across the whole order. But for most of them, that stinger never touches a mammal. It exists for one purpose: to paralyze spiders, caterpillars, or beetles that will feed her young. The tarantula hawk wasp, for instance, hunts tarantulas many times her own size, paralyzes them with a surgical strike to the nervous system, and buries them alive beside a single egg, leaving her larvae to feed on fresh prey for weeks. It's the same anatomical design we fear at a picnic, put to use in a war that happens underground, one no human will ever witness. We've spent our whole lives hating the wrong insect, because the most important work of the wasp doesn't happen in gardens. It happens in silence, across millions of plants, every single day. A female parasitoid wasp finds an aphid on a hazelnut leaf. She moves in, pins her prey down for a fraction of a second, and drives an ovipositor as fine as a hair into its body. She lays a single egg, along with one more tool, a virus she carries inside her own body, timed to shut down the aphid's defenses at exactly the right moment. That virus doesn't attack on its own. It blocks the immune cells that would normally surround and destroy a foreign body inside her, like switching off the alarm before walking into the house. She flies off. The aphid keeps walking, keeps feeding, apparently untouched. Inside it, something has already begun. The larva develops by consuming the aphid from the inside out, organ by organ, avoiding anything vital for as long as possible to keep the host alive. Seen up close, beneath the almost transparent body of a young aphid, you could make out that tiny larva advancing millimeter by millimeter, while the host never once stops moving. Only at the very end, when there's no other option left, does the host die and the adult wasp emerge. It's a mechanism so precise it looks engineered rather than evolved. No pesticide on Earth can tell a vital organ from expendable tissue. That same scene, repeated over a single aphid on a single leaf, plays out millions of times a day across entire fields. And at that scale, it stops being a laboratory curiosity and becomes a pest control system no chemical factory can match for precision. In the mid-1980s, Oregon's hazelnut orchards were fighting a pest that forced growers to spray several times a season, at real cost to both their wallets and the land. Then a single species was introduced, a wasp barely visible to the naked eye called Trioxys pallidus. And unlike a pesticide, it never needed reapplying. It reproduced on its own, spread across the entire growing region by itself, and within less than a decade, drove the pest population far below the threshold that used to demand constant spraying. Before it arrived, keeping the crop clean meant repeated fumigation every season. Afterward, most of that cost simply disappeared. Today, it keeps hazelnut aphids in check across entire commercial orchards, generating an estimated $400,000 a year in economic benefit, without a single extra drop of insecticide. Here's the twist nobody expects. The same stinger that triggers the instinct to swat a wasp on a patio belongs, in the vast majority of species, to an insect that will never once use it on a human being. That stinger is, in fact, a modified ovipositor. It evolved to insert eggs with surgical precision inside another insect, not to defend a nest from curious people. The shape we fear and the function that saves harvests came from the very same body part, just aimed at a completely different target. It's the same part that, seconds ago in your own garden, made you pull your hand back. No farmer needs to see that wasp to benefit from her. Most don't even know she exists, and they've never once watched her land on a single leaf in their orchard. And that's exactly why it works. The quieter and more invisible her labor, the more effective it is. Without this wasp, much of the food that reaches your table would be far harder to produce. But protecting your food happens underground, in an orchard, where no one ever sees it. There's another job that happens in plain sight, inside the fruit you might have eaten this week. Inside a fig, before it ever becomes a fruit, there's a sealed structure made of tiny, inward-facing flowers, invisible from the outside. The only way in is a canal called the ostiole, so narrow and lined with tightly packed bracts that it works almost like a biological lock. A tiny female wasp, barely 2 millimeters long, forces her way through that canal, and the friction tears off her wings and antennae in the process. It doesn't matter. She'll never need them again. Once inside, she moves flower to flower, laying eggs in some, and in others, emptying the pollen she carries packed into specialized pouches under her front legs. A cargo she brought, intact, from the fig where she was born. And she dies right there, sealed forever inside the fruit she helped create. That death, repeated millions of times a day in fig trees across half the planet, is the reason the fig you might have eaten this week exists at all. Without that exact wasp, that exact fruit never forms. There are more than 750 species of fig trees scattered across the planet. Each one has its own wasp, and no other species can take her place. It's one of the most specific mutualisms known in all of nature. Inside the sealed fig, the story of this wasp doesn't end with her death. Her eggs hatch in there, in total darkness. The males emerge first, blind, wingless, with mandibles wildly out of proportion to their bodies. Those mandibles aren't for eating. They serve exactly two purposes: fertilizing the females, still trapped inside their own flowers, and chewing for hours through the fig's inner wall until they've opened an exit tunnel. Once the tunnel is ready, they die right there, having never once seen daylight. The females, Now fertilized, and with their pollen pouches freshly loaded from the flowers their mother just pollinated, escape through the tunnel their own brothers carved open and fly off in search of another fig tree of their exact species, somewhere in the forest, to start the same cycle all over again. That wasp never travels beyond the tree where she was born and where she'll die. And yet, without knowing it, she keeps an entire pantry stocked for hundreds of other species. At dusk, in a tropical forest, a fruit bat tracks down a ripe fig by scent and pulls it from the branch. A few meters up, a hornbill does the same with its beak. Neither one knows that fruit only exists because, weeks earlier, a 2-millimeter wasp died inside it. In the months when the rest of the forest has nothing else to offer, hornbills, fruit bats, monkeys, and a long list of birds turn to figs as an emergency food source. No wasp, no fig. No fig, that pantry disappears. Take away the wasp and you don't just lose a tree. You lose a food source an entire web of species depends on, in cascade, and a fruit that might also be part of your life, even if you've never once seen the 2-millimeter wasp that made it possible. Protecting your food and holding up an entire forest are already 2 ways this insect has saved your life without you noticing. There's a third, and it happens in the last place you'd expect, inside a laboratory, with the very venom we fear. In Brazil, a social wasp known as Polybia paulista defends her nest with a venom that causes sharp, localized pain, much like any other social wasp. For years, it was treated as nothing more than a field nuisance, until a team of researchers from Brazil and the United Kingdom decided to ask what that venom actually did at the cellular level, and found something nobody expected. It contains a molecule called Polybia MP1. When it touches a healthy cell, almost nothing happens. When it touches a cancer cell, it punches through it within seconds, tearing holes large enough for the cell to lose everything it needs to stay alive. First, it protected your food. Then it held up entire forests. This is proof number 3. Its own venom might help us fight disease. The difference lies in the cell's surface, not the venom itself. Cancer cells expose something on their membrane that healthy cells keep hidden, and that exact anomaly is what the molecule recognizes and attacks almost exclusively. In lab tests, it has slowed the growth of prostate cancer cells, bladder cancer cells, multi-drug-resistant leukemia cells, and glioblastoma, one of the most aggressive brain tumors that exists. Let's be precise here. This is still early-stage research, tested on isolated cells and in lab models, not a treatment available in any hospital yet. But the mechanism it describes opens up an entirely new path for drug design, one that targets the makeup of a tumor cell's membrane instead of its DNA. And Polybia paulista isn't an isolated case. It's a signal of something bigger. Insect venoms, dismissed for centuries as nothing but a source of pain, have become one of the most promising frontiers in medical bioprospecting today, precisely because every species has spent millions of years perfecting molecules that can breach cell membranes with a precision no lab has managed to engineer from scratch. In fact, that same wasp has already handed us a second clue, completely different from the first. Her venom also contains another molecule capable of wiping out bacteria resistant to nearly every known antibiotic. Engineers at MIT tweaked it slightly and, in mouse trials, completely cleared infections caused by Pseudomonas aeruginosa, a bacterium that today barely responds to any available treatment. In the United States alone, antibiotic-resistant infections affect more than 2,800,000 people every year and cause more than 35,000 deaths. One single wasp species, swatted without a second thought for generations, has delivered clues to 2 of the century's biggest medical challenges within the span of a decade: cancer and antibiotic resistance. Of the more than 150,000 known wasp species, only a handful of venoms have ever been studied in this kind of detail. No one knows yet what the rest are hiding. At the start of this documentary, I asked if you could tell a bee from a wasp. That's no longer the question that matters. The question that matters is this: how long have we been judging an animal without ever really knowing who it was? Generation after generation, we've pulled our hand back from the same blurry shape, never once stopping to ask which of the two we were actually looking at. That split second of doubt, bee or wasp, has quietly decided, without our ever realizing it, which of the two insects got to live. Picture a single wasp resting for a moment on a leaf, with no nest to defend and no interest whatsoever in coming near you. She has no idea that, on the other side of the world, another wasp like her keeps an entire harvest alive without a single drop of pesticide. She has no idea that, inside a sealed fig, another wasp like her chose to die, so a tree could bear fruit that hundreds of animals will feed on and never once see her. She has no idea that, in a test tube, the venom of a distant relative has learned to tell a sick cell from a healthy one with a precision no drug has ever matched from scratch. She just flies, hunts what she needs, and goes on with her tiny, indifferent life. The next time one lands near you, you won't be able to tell, just by looking, whether she's one of the ones protecting a harvest, holding up a forest, or carrying in her venom an answer medicine is still searching for. And maybe that uncertainty is exactly the point. None of this means you have to stop pulling your hand back the next time a wasp comes near your food. That reflex will still be there, and it makes sense to keep it. What changes isn't the reflex, it's what you know while you're doing it. A wasp will never know who you are. She'll never try to help you. And yet, she's been doing it for millions of years. The closer you look, the stranger the world becomes.